Yama, or welcome to all from Ngunnawal country to our UNSW Alumni Transition Seminar. I'm Dr. Matt McCormack, a senior lecturer from the School of Business, UNSW Canberra. I'm a veteran of the Royal Australian Navy of more than 31 years. I transitioned to academia from the ADF in early 2018. In addition to my lecturing duties, I have had the opportunity to complete research with colleagues from the University of the Sunshine Coast on veterans transition. It is my honour to be your MC for this evening. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people that are the traditional custodians of the land from where I am speaking to you now, as well as the traditional custodians of the land where you are participating from. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today, especially those who have served or currently serving in the ADF. I encourage you to let us know the traditional custodians of the land where you are in the discussion forum. There are over 120 of us joining this evening's seminar. Most of us are alumni, but there are a few non-alumni and family members. Whatever your reason for joining us, you are most welcome. We are hosting two sessions this evening that we hope are going to be of value to you. The first is getting transition ready, and the second is thriving in the civilian workplace. As the education partner of the Australian Defence Force, UNSW Canberra is committed to supporting current and former members of the ADF, including our alumni, with a particular focus on those making the often challenging transition from the military to civilian workforce. You'll have the opportunity this evening to have one-on-one in-depth discussions about studying at UNSW Canberra and with the Australian Graduate School of Management on our Kensington campus, including access to scholarships and professional short courses in the virtual booths. I would like to acknowledge that there are a number of education providers that have veterans programs. Flinders University in South Australia has been particularly proactive in this space and is doing a great deal in the education sector to encourage others to initiate similar programs. I do encourage you to reach out to your chosen education institution to see if they can assist you. Approximately 2.5% of Australia's populations are veterans of the Australian Defence Force. Around 6,000 join their ranks every year. There's nothing surer that once you join the ADF that one day you're going to leave. And that transition presents a number of challenges some of you may not even have thought of. The good news is that those who've been before you report that the skills and attributes that they gained in the ADF have allowed them to cope well with these challenges and thrive in their new careers. My research with my Sunshine Coast colleagues, we undertook in-depth interviews with 31 veterans who had left military service and been successful in finding new employment. The findings of the research identified a series of barriers and enablers to veterans' transition. The participants reported that those support organisations for veterans were central to them gaining employment. Again, the role of the Veterans Network, both formal and informal, was of paramount importance. We were unable to find any veteran that did not want to reach out and assist a fellow veteran. They may never have met before, but that didn't matter. The fact that they had served, no matter what service, they were willing to help. The veterans reported that the need for supportive family and their network during the transition process was also important, and the need to develop coping strategies because of the level of uncertainty that they experienced during their transition. The participants reported that navigating the new civilian recruitment process and onboarding process was quite challenging, particularly translating their military roles and the skills that they attained during their service. And as part of that, they spoke about the need and the challenge to civilianise their CVs so that their future possible employer could understand the skills that they could possibly bring to their new role. The veterans often spoke about the role of mentors and buddies in their new organisations to help them settle in, and that there was a need to learn to engage differently with their work colleagues because the culture changed, the leadership changed, and terminology and so on. They often spoke about the security blanket of being able to do a bit of reserve service to get back to the old culture every now and then and help them in that transition process. They spoke about how important it was to be prepared. The more prepared, the easier the transition was. But there was an acknowledgement of the loss of their military identity and the fact that, you know, the skills that they had gained really helped them in transition. My own experience was more challenging than I expected, not organisationally, but emotionally. I had, probably like many others participating tonight, not known anything but the ADF since I joined at 18. At 50, the emotional adjustment of not being a Navy officer anymore was my biggest challenge. I'm sure we're going to hear many similar stories during the course of this evening and get some practical advice on what to expect, how to face those challenges, and things to make your transition much smoother and less stressful. So it's my honour to introduce our host for our first session this evening on getting transition ready, Mr. Mick Cook. Mick is a 20-year veteran of the Australian Army and transitioned in 2019. He is now a colleague of mine at the UNSW and is the Business Development Manager for Defence. He has some interesting academic qualifications, including a Masters of Criminology and Criminal Justice, a Masters from completion of his staff course, and is clearly a glutton for punishment, having taken on a PhD candidature this year. He is a fellow alumnus of UNSW with a Bachelor of Arts from 2003 and a Master of Arts in 2013. He's an award-winning strategic communications expert and successful podcast host and executive producer. Welcome, Mick.
Thanks, Matt. Ladies and gents, welcome. Before I begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm speaking to you from today, in my home in Belconnen, the Ngunnawal people. And I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome any First Nations guests attending tonight. Welcome to Session 1, Getting Transition Ready. I'm excited to be hosting this session because I'm a recent veteran who's transitioned. I transitioned, as Matt mentioned, in 2019. And it was after making the decision to transition 5 months beforehand, because I decided to wait for an opportunity to present itself. And as you'll know, by going through the process and information sessions at the moment, it can be quite a difficult time to decide when to transition, to pick the right moment. So I took 5 months before finding a transition opportunity for civilian employment. And then I had 1 week between uniform and suit with my role here at the UNSW Defence Research Institute. Now, I became so fascinated by the process, the good parts of it, and also the difficult parts of it, that I've decided to do a PhD, as Matt mentioned, studying the veteran transition process to understand what veterans go through and how we can communicate that. Part of that journey is helping inform veterans before they leave on what the process can be like. And to sweeten the pot for any of those veterans looking for a transition sometime soon, I'd like to mention that we are recruiting at the UNSW Defence Research Institute for someone to join me in the business development team to help build relationships between defence and our researchers. Now, that's enough about me. It is time to meet our panel. Now, our first panellist is Alison Creagh. Alison is a chair, a non-executive director, and strategic advisor across various companies and organisations. Following 30 years of service and having reached the rank of brigadier, Alison retired from the Australian Regular Army in March 2015. Next, we have Michele Roberts. Michele is an associate professor and the academic director of the Australian Graduate School of Management at the UNSW Business School. Michele established and continues to oversee the Australian Graduate School of Management's suite of military scholarships and works closely with Wandering Warriors to support members of Special Forces as they transition to a civilian career. And finally, please welcome Brett Sangster. Brett is a partner at McCullough Robertson Lawyers. He is also a chairperson at Wandering Warriors and the Australian Veterans Employers Association. Brett has his own transition experience, having served as an Army officer for 14 years. Welcome, Alison, Michelle, and Brett. Let's jump into it. So tonight we're going to be answering some pre-submitted questions, and the audience, you also are able to submit questions through the live Q&A submission portal. To start off, there's a few we prepared earlier from guests that pre-submitted. The first question I've got, and this one is something that can be answered by any of our panelists, but I'll probably go to Alison first. What are some of the things defence members should consider when deciding whether to transition?
Well, Mick, firstly, really pleased to join you today, and thanks very much to UNSW for putting this transition seminar on. I think it's really important, very valuable, and I hope everyone gets some benefit out of it today. For me, my big takeaway, and it's Matt touched on it in his opening remarks, I think people need to get themselves ready for transition early. So even if you're not thinking about leaving the military, it would be timely just to reflect on what you like doing and start to collect information about what you've done in your career, so that when you actually have to put a CV together, you've already got the building blocks ready. So I was fortunate in that I my last job in the military actually was a liaison officer into a civilian organisation. So I was already starting to get myself in the headspace around transition, and that was particularly valuable. I was starting to think about how the jobs and roles that I'd had in my military career, what sort of language I might use to describe them in a civilian context. But most importantly, I was going through a mental checklist of what I really didn't like doing and what I really like doing. Because this chapter of my life, I really want to concentrate just on doing those things that I particularly enjoy, because I get to control my career now in ways that is much more expansive than I did in the military. So for me, it's all about controlling what I like, doing what I like. And so I needed to really think about that while I was still serving, so that I could start to narrow things down. And the other thing that I think is really important is that your family... So you actually need to understand what it might mean for you and your family, for you to leave the military, and have them as part of the process, because you might be changing locations, but you're most certainly changing a little bit of who you are. It's an exciting new chapter, and you're going to be enjoying aspects of it. It's a little bit challenging at times, but it's more exciting than challenging, to be honest. And if you look at it as a great opportunity, it's incredibly rewarding. So I think really my big takeaway is get ready early, think about it early, and start to assemble your toolkit that prepares you to leave.
And Brett, as another veteran panelist, I'll throw the same question to you. What are some of the things that you believe defence members should consider when deciding whether to transition?
And thanks to UNSW for having me here tonight. Look, I reflect a lot of what Alison said. A lot of clearly, the more you plan, the smoother your transition from the military will be. Preparing your, it comes down to your CVs, but also using the tools that are available to you in the military, particularly around education. There's some terrific opportunities to educate yourself and take it, whether they be long or short courses, to prepare yourself for the workplace. So I think that's really important, and utilising those tools to good effect prior to transitioning. And that includes also, by the way, some of the time that you get to spend during study, some of the leave opportunities that you have in the military that you don't necessarily get when you leave, particularly once you enter employment and you're limited in terms of your leave opportunities. So I think that planning bit is absolutely key, Mick, as Alison has pointed out.
Thanks, Brett. And I know it's a common theme in both of those answers. The preparation. Alison mentioned the CVs and study, and Brett, you mentioned the study there. So it's a perfect segue for me to bring Michele into this conversation because a lot of the pre-submitted questions we received revolved around study qualifications. So one of the questions that stuck out to me when we were preparing for tonight's session was, do you think there's utility in completing further university study or a short course before leaving the military? And I guess this is a great question for you, Michele, because you support veterans studying.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mick. Obviously, I'm biased, but we know now that you're going to have to do education throughout your whole life to stay relevant and equipped for the jobs of the future. So, maybe 10 years ago, you will be able to do a bachelor's degree, and that would see you through the rest of your career. But there are so many shocks coming at industry, and industry is so disrupted at this point that the idea that a 20-year-old bachelor degree is going to get you through is just really not going to work for you. So in some shape or form, you must always be learning. And I think that includes, doing some master's studies, although I would say do a lot of due diligence before you just jump into a master's. Because they take a lot of resources, time and money, but also short courses, as Brett mentioned. So definitely you are going to need to stay educated and continue to educate yourself throughout your whole career now. So look for courses. First of all, do a lot of research on which are growth industries sectors and which roles are growing. And then, really understand what roles are going to come out of that degree. And then, just make sure that you are going to like that kind of work. But definitely you are going to have to keep educating yourself. And the hardest thing, I think, is when you see people that didn't think that was the case, and then they're in their 40s and they're, I see these people who say, I'm going to do an MBA or I'm going to do a master's, and 5 years later, they're still saying that to me. And the sooner you start to really skill up and educate yourself, the bigger the impact it's going to have on your career trajectory. So start working out what you like, as Alison said, and start to get educated through short, free courses and commit to some longer things too.
Thanks, Michele. I like the point about doing the due diligence. As mentioned by Matt when he was introducing me, one thing that stands out in the study that I did was a Master's of Criminology and Criminal Justice. And without the context, that might seem really odd, but I did that degree because I was living in an area where criminal intelligence was actually a growth industry, unfortunately, and then decided not to transition. But the preparation is important for people. And we know that there are great opportunities in defence to leverage those study systems that Brett has talked about. And also there are other opportunities like the military scholarships at the Australian Graduate School of Management. Now we have some questions coming in through the live chat, so that's great. So we'll go to one of those, and I might save some of these pre-prepared questions because then at least I know I can carry the night through. One of the questions relates to imposter syndrome, and the question says, how can I feel like I'm actually capable of pursuing outside of defence, and how do people deal with imposter syndrome? I might push to you on this one, Alison.
It's a really good question. The first point that I would make to all of you is trust yourself and back yourself. You have done amazing things in your military career, and you have every opportunity to have a highly successful civilian career. And you need to go with confidence into the next chapter and treat it as an exciting chapter. Don't be intimidated by it. If you think about when you joined up and went through recruiting and you did your first training courses, did you ever think you were going to survive? Well, I bet you struggled at times, and I'd put money on the fact that you came through it and you've all had successful careers now. So trust yourself. You've got skills that other people in the Australian community don't have. And you've got so many attributes that people value. So have confidence in yourself. And the other thing is think about all of the times in your military career where you had to step up to the plate and do something a little bit challenging, a little bit different, whether it was giving people orders, whether it was instructing on a course, whether it was actually presenting to senior officers on a particular topic, and you survived all of that, and you're going to hit serious goals out in civvy streets. So don't be intimidated by it. Back yourselves. You also have a bunch of things going for you. You're likely to carry a security clearance. Employers like security clearances. So that's something that is hard to get. Don't be afraid to reskill. If there are things that you've done in the military that didn't really push your buttons and you want to do something different, have a look at what's outside in some of the employment areas where skills are short, in defence industry and cybersecurity, in some of the really niche areas where there are real growth opportunities. And if they even remotely push your buttons and you think you want to give it a go, there's a bunch of short courses out there where you can really put your toe in the water, see what it's like and see whether it suits you. And through those short courses, you may actually get the bug and find that you're really good at it. And I can tell you that screaming for people to work in defence industry, screaming for people to work in cybersecurity, screaming for people to start new businesses and actually push the envelope. You'll be surprised at how good you are at this next stage. So all I can really say is have the confidence to back yourself.
Thanks, Alison. That's a fantastic message. And for everyone in defence who is looking at transitioning, imposter syndrome is not unique to defence. It's actually it means that you've got something that my mother accused me of not having a healthy dose of, which is humility. So it's wonderful to see that you question these things, because it means that you're going forward. You'll be able to go in a way that makes you question constructively, as Alison mentioned. Now, we're really lucky to have someone who's Veterans Employers Association, because this next question is perfect for Brett. And the question we have here is, how can I learn more about potential roles within the civilian workforce and what they actually entail?
Preparation planning piece before we transition in an ideal scenario. But there's lots of platforms out there, lots of organisations that will support you in this function, and to help you gain some insights into where the opportunities are. And I'm sure that's a function of the academia as well, to help you find and connect you with those organisations. One of those organisations is the Australian Veterans Employers Coalition, and what we do there at what we call is AVEC, and it's another initiative of the Industry Advisory Council of the Prime Minister's initiative on veterans. And what we seek to do there is effectively you can put your CV into our portal and tick those organisations that you'd like to be connected with to find out more. And you'll be contacted from the various HR departments of that coalition, which is some major, large organisations, ASX listed, and global organisations that are part of that network. So that's just one example of how you can connect yourself and see what's out there. And it gives you direct access to those organisations rather than going through websites or the seek.com arrangement. The other way, of course, is just to maintain your connections, find some mentors, and certainly pick up the phone. I think Alison made the point that your skills are highly valuable, and particularly in the current environment when defence expenditure is at generational levels. The IP that you are bringing with you is very valuable right now. It's a terrific time if you were transitioning, and those skills are very transferable, as Alison pointed out. Backing yourself is really important, but the skills that we learn in the military, all of the skills we learn in the military, equip us really well for our day jobs, even if it's just the ability to communicate. When I stepped out of the military, I walked into a law firm, and I was able to to communicate really effectively, because I was very familiar with standing in front of a group of people and talking impromptu or briefing or whatever the case was. And that skill was noted by my colleagues at the time as to how I was so effective at communicating, and that was a skill that I learned in the military. So I think backing yourself, I just wanted to reflect that, or reiterate that point from Alison, that that's such an important point.
Thanks, Brett. And one of the points you made there was about connections, maintaining connections, and the next question, which I'll pass to Michele, is about connections and networks, because as we know, particularly for those people that transition into the defence industry, I'm one of them. Your networks are quite useful. In fact, for a lot of us, they are how you get a lot of your business done. But networking is different when you're outside of the military, because it's no longer enabled by an institution in a structured manner, which is why we tend to have questions about networking quite a lot, because veterans, when they go to transition, seem to recognise this. So I guess my question for Michele, based on what our attendees have submitted, is how can our attendees maintain networks, professional networks, once they leave the military?
Yeah, it's a great and a critical question. Your networks make everything possible. And indeed, there are many roles where you're expected to have professional networks. So there's a number of ways you can do it. I think if you are studying, try to do a face-to-face program, or if you're online, look for the face-to-face opportunities that providers put on to meet. Also join your professional associations. You know, if you see your strengths as project management, go and join, get the certification from the Institute of Project Management and attend their wonderful events. You know, there are many other professional associations that are really strong, and all of the members are very committed to networking. Also, just begin with the networks that you've got and start to use those. So you build networks by meeting someone, asking for advice, and then saying, oh, who else should I talk to? And then they'll open up more networks, and you get this wonderful snowball effect. So, you know, commit to turning up to things and introducing yourself. Get an elevator pitch ready. There's lots of free resources on networking. So, you know, Google them and just watch lots of resources on how to network, how to prepare an elevator pitch. Make sure that you've got that pitch when you turn up, and just take a really light touch. Just be really curious and grateful and appreciative of people. But I find that most people, if you say, would it be possible if I dropped in to your office for 30 minutes of career advice? Most people will say yes. You've just got to really plate it up for people. So I find that if a veteran says to me, you know, could I drop in for 15 to 30 minutes to get some career advice and maybe show you my resume, that's a very easy ask. But if they say, can I send you my resume and get some written feedback, you know, it starts to get like a chore. So just keep it light, reach out to lots of people. Most people have to give career advice. And then always sort of end with, oh, is there anyone else you think that I should speak to? And then always be appreciative and follow up with thank yous, not just to the person you've met, but to the person that introduced you. Luckily, LinkedIn has made this incredibly easy. So even if you feel a bit isolated right now and you feel like you haven't even got the beginnings of a civilian network, start to use LinkedIn. Even the free package of LinkedIn will let you search for people who've got backgrounds similar to you. So who came from your unit and is now in industry? Who's in, you know, a company that you want to work for, and then search on the LinkedIn feature for, you know, ADF and for military backgrounds, and reach out and just say, you know, you're someone with a wonderful background. Could I possibly get, you know, 15 minutes online to ask you a few questions? But as long as you're appreciative and you're setting yourself a goal of maybe, I'm going to reach out to 3 people each week, you'll be amazed how much it builds if you're curious and grateful to people.
Thanks, Michele. The networks are essential, and this kind of ties into the next part, which talks about various elements that people might miss when they leave the services. This next one I might push to Brett, because place you moved into when you transitioned. Then I've got a really interesting one for Alison after this. But this one for you, Brett. How did you find out of defence and adjusting to the level of workplace culture and the users?
Yeah, look, mate, the number one thing is you won't find the same level of camaraderie anywhere else. That's just my first observation, and that's the lesson I've learned from. It's just, I mean, it's clearly a unique environment in the military, and it's very hard to replicate anywhere else. That level of bond that you get is not the same in corporate. So I think my advice would be to brace yourselves for that. The bond is different, and it's a different environment, but it's to my, at least in my experience, it's quite removed. But I look for opportunities, and I to answer the question on the in the portal there, I had a law degree, or part of a law degree, before I joined the military. I then completed it using the mechanisms in the army, and then I was able to transition into law firm. And I was looking for opportunities where there was some structure and there's some hierarchy, so that was familiar to me, and that's the case in a law firm. Likewise, I left the law firm and went to Downer EDI, and I went into a construction practice there where I was on site working on an oil and gas. And again, that was really familiar, having been deployed. It wasn't that dissimilar in deploying in big groups of people with focus people on the construction site for weeks on end. It was similar to being on a deployment where we lived out of a mess and we worked long hours. So I found employment that were with structures that were familiar to me, and I felt that I thrived in that environment. Clearly, the professional services, the law firm required that, having that education as well. But I think finding a work environment or employment type that is familiar to you and you're comfortable in will just assist with that transition and your comfort zone in that workspace.
Thanks, Brett. And I can say from personal experience, I found it really easy because I moved into a team of all former ADF and current reservists. So I understanding workplace culture element, and I also went to work at a university that's on a military campus. So we could not now. We have got a couple more questions in the start section from our attendees. Got a pre-prepared one that I'm going to ask. A lot of teams were getting through these questions as well, which is about identity and purpose, which we know is a very, very strong part of when you wear a uniform. Alison, given that 3 decades in the military before transitioning, how do you advise people about handling the identity and purpose shift after transitioning? And the lead into that, a lot of people talk about whether or not they come back because they might not be able to handle that understanding of an identity and purpose shift.
Really interesting question, and actually directly linked to the types of responses that Michele and Brett have just given. I agree with Brett that you're unlikely to find direct correlation between your military workplace and your civilian workplace, although there are some that are similar. I think the thing that I learned in my transition is to establish your new community early before you leave the military. And so have a bunch of people around you who you're already familiar with who are not military. So for me, I'm a rower, and I was well connected into the community rowing in Canberra. And so that meant I had a bunch of friends and colleagues and people who I connected with who were not part of my military network. So when I was transitioning, it was less disruptive. And also I started to understand how other people saw me in a non-military environment. So, I actually really enjoy now being Alison and not ma'am. I'm known for me, not what rank I have, what position I hold, and what my status is by my appointment. And so in some way, there are real freedoms that you get through being able to be you. But you need to give yourself permission to find out about how other people see you. You need to be confident that there is a bit of you still left, and that you're not the role and the rank and the uniform. So I do see some of my colleagues going back into the military because they find it too dislocating to be exclusively in the civilian workforce. But I didn't. I miss my military family, but I don't miss the military bureaucracy. I actually enjoy the freedoms that I get through choice in my civilian work environment. I don't miss some of the constraints that I had through my military posting cycle and posting environment. So I think when you're thinking about who you are, what your purpose is, I agree with Brett's comments around finding out what you're comfortable with. So for me, the things that I value in service, I still do now. The continuing to serve. So I do a lot of volunteering because I get a lot of value from that. I do a lot of work with veterans. So that's my social connection back into the military environment. I work with defence industry. So that's my connection back into the military environment. But I do that as Alison. And I do that with my, every now and then I do it as Brigadier Alison, but most of the time I'm there as Alison, and I'm valued for the advice that I give and the experiences that I've had, but I don't do it through a position or a title or a rank or a uniform. I guess the other thing, so when you're looking at your future, when you decide to leave the military, the biggest thing that I can share with you was I really interrogated what my values were and what I thought was important in who I wanted to relate to. What organisations did I think I would not feel comfortable with? Did I feel comfortable as a public servant? And I wouldn't feel uncomfortable in that environment, but it wasn't the thing that I thought was going to be really pushing my buttons. So I went down a portfolio career, so a mix of lots of different things, non-executive director on boards, strategic advisor for organisations, and some chair roles, because for me, they're the things that I enjoyed doing. I like the strategic thinking and the innovation and working with organisations and people, but I didn't necessarily want to be bound into a bureau. So understanding you is really, to me, so important in your transition. Actually really thinking about who you are and how you what you value, how your family values you and what they need from you, and how other people see you who are not in the military. And if you do that, you're starting to get the building blocks, I think, around what your life after the military identity and purpose might be. But I come back to the fact that you spent a long time in the workforce. So your next career should be something that you want to do and something that you enjoy and something that you resonate with. It's so important that you think about what you like doing because you want to be happy.
Thanks, Alison. As someone who's lucky enough to have you on the board of our organisation, it's really, really great to have a former defence member sitting on the board of an academic institution because they bring that flavour, particularly when it's one like the Defence Research Institute where we do a lot of work with defence, so it helps. But it is about understanding. I think one benefit we have with you, Alison, is you talked about a transition process and post-military career that is not the standard that you hear about when you hear about transition, which provides us a really good segue towards the entrepreneurial area. So veterans transition into full-time employment in another organisation. I'm one of those. We know that some veterans transition into a portfolio relationship with a number of organisations. Alison's done that. We have a question from one of our attendees. best entrepreneurship practices and conflicts with defence. Now, our panel is not going to advise on how to how to work through defence conflict policy. However, when I was in defence and I ran and I still continue to run a business, so please contact the alumni team. They'll put you in contact with me and I can talk to you about that. But we won't be able to provide you advice on defence policy, apart from I read it and complied. But question, because we have some very entrepreneurial and innovative defence members who then want to step out and build a business. And the mechanisms for understanding how to be an entrepreneur versus an intrapreneur. And an intrapreneur are mostly those people that stay in service and generate innovation for the organisation. And entrepreneurs step out and they build their own value offering in industry. We're very lucky that Michelle's here with us tonight because the organisation she belongs to produces some of the best veteran entrepreneurs we have in Australia. So, Alison, I guess tonight, how can veterans connect with the entrepreneurial culture and practices that tend to lead to positive results?
To you, Michelle, but I will just add, there are organisations out there that are there to help you. So the Australian Industry Defence Network, if you're a small medium enterprise, there's other member organisations. Brett's already talked to you about his environment, and there's organisations like the Veteran Community Business Chamber and other community business chambers around the country that can help you in establishing businesses. But I'm going to throw to Michelle on that one.
Thanks, Alison. Actually, I would agree. A shout out to Aidan. I've attended the networking events and always people in the room, you know, someone that never knows anyone. They're just so willing to talk and give you their time. So definitely, you know, do go to those professional networking events. And so in terms of entrepreneurship, I think this is one of the most misunderstood or perhaps unknown issues for veterans is that when I look at all of the veterans I've seen transition out, honestly, it's been the minority that have transitioned out into a large multinational, a large corporate, and lived happily ever after. But the overwhelming majority will end up in startups and absolutely love it. So, you know, there was a question about how do you find your purpose? I really see veterans find their purpose when they get involved in startups. And I think there might be something with the fact that you've come from this very large regimented organization. The idea of joining another, you know, multinational with hundreds of layers and rules and compliance maybe is not as fun as it might seem. But when I see veterans exit into startups, that's when you really see people connect into their passion. And it really leverages a lot of the skill sets that you have coming out of the military, working in very small teams on complex problems that are new, that haven't been well understood before. And, you know, just really hustling and working relentlessly in the pursuit of excellence. So definitely look at the opportunity to join a startup as a future career. And I think what I would also say is that a lot of the businesses, the legacy businesses now, are not where the jobs are in the future. So all of the cool jobs now are in startups and scale-ups, and all of the career opportunities. We know that the great fortunes of our time will come to companies that are not even built yet. So the transition to clean energy, you know, the companies that nail that, and some of them are being led by veterans right now. I look at one of our military scholars, Tim Willits. And, you know, Tim joined the military at 17 and he exited just, you know, approaching 40, but is now, I think he's CFO, but he's on the leadership team of one of our most exciting battery companies. It just got funding of 40 million, I think. So, you know, do look at the opportunities that are coming up now and be part of that startup culture. So we do have lots of courses at AGSM and lots of opportunities, but UNSW has got an entrepreneurial stack that is second to none. and we have UNSW founders, and you might not know this, but if you're an alum of UNSW, you have entrepreneurial support for life. No matter what stage your business is at, even if it's just a gem of an idea, you can reach out to UNSW founders, and they will give you a mentor, and they've got problems and training and events, most of it free. So if you are an alum on the line, I would say jump onto UNSW founders tonight and have a look at the extraordinary entrepreneurial stack that UNSW's got for alumni.
Thank you, Michelle. That was a fantastic answer. I know that of at least 2 other clean energy businesses that have come out of veterans who attended AGSM, and the Founders Program you mentioned today. I spent the whole day with the Founders Program today, helping coach entrepreneurs in the university. So please, veterans, if you are looking towards an entrepreneurial career and you are an alum, please contact UNSW founders. They're absolutely amazing. Now, ladies and gents, we're on to our last question of the night, and I've saved this one for last. It is one that's been submitted this evening, but it's one that I think those who have transitioned have probably felt themselves when thinking about transitioning. Because of the team environment, often veterans, when they're in uniform, don't want to let the team down. In fact, I'd say it's most of the time they don't. And the question we have is about seeking support and advice when they're only beginning to think about transition, and they may not want the ADF to know that they are looking on the outside. And Brett, I might pass this one to yourself.
Oh, look, that's a really good question, and I was reading that question. I think it's these networks that we've been talking about, and just reaching out. Wandering Warriors. There's we've talked about AIDEM, we've talked about AVEC. I think having just as many conversations as you can for those who have transitioned before you, and in those industries. Michelle talked earlier about just picking up the phone and talking to people, asking to spend 15 minutes of their time, and I couldn't agree more that anyone would be prepared. It would be highly unlikely if someone would say no to them. So I think it's that preparation, reaching out to people as broadly as you can within the time constraints that you have, and just doing your research. I think that I think that's the way I would approach it.
If I could add, the other interesting thing for me is your coffee catch-up could well be your job interview. So the thing that I think that military people transitioning just don't get is the recruiting process in Civvy Street is vastly different in the private sector than it is in the public sector and in the military. And I had 2 coffee conversations that landed me roles. So this reach out and connect with mentors, networks, people that you know for advice can start as advice and can actually win you a role. Not always, but just be prepared that when you go in and you have these conversations, you may actually indirectly being interviewed for a future role. And that's great. It's exciting. So don't be intimidated by it. Do it, because it's really an opportunity to sell you and to just talk about you and what you like and who you are and what you can bring to the table, your elevator pitch. It's really just describing you in a short amount of time and what pushes your buttons, and you'll be surprised.
Thank you, ladies and gents. That's actually all we have time for in this session, and I want to thank you for all your questions, both those that submitted beforehand and those who submitted questions during the event tonight. A lot of those questions are quite valuable to more than just. So thank you for being brave and putting yourself out there. Now, I hope you're feeling this session a little bit more informed. Just note there are 3 veterans transitioned, and we are part of the majority of veterans who successfully transitioned. So please join me in thanking our panel, Alison and Michele Roberts. And I'd also like to thank our UNSW Canberra alumni events team for organising this fantastic event for UNSW Canberra alumni and veterans. That's it from me, so I'll hand you back to our Matt McCormick. Thank you for your time. Good night.
And thank you, Mick and panel. Fantastic session, lots of fantastic questions and some really insightful things to think about from the panel.